on the parents for the good of the children. So in the church, the priest receives a mission at his ordination, which is prior to his promise of obedience to the bishop. I don't mean that it just comes before it in time, because that promise of obedience is right at the end of the ceremony, but it's prior in meaning, it's more fundamental. And at the center of the priest's mission is to offer Holy Mass, even daily. And that means the superiors, the church hierarchy, cannot obstruct that mission arbitrarily. Of course, if the priest commits a canonical crime, he can be removed from ministry. But without a crime, they can't do that. And especially, much more, the Vatican, the Pope, whoever, Bergoglio, cannot ban the traditional liturgy. And this is taking away the life of the church. Under no circumstances can they do that. This should be especially obvious for priests who are ordained. They offer their whole life to the church. And when the church makes the decision to ordain them, it's on the understanding that they're giving their whole life for that mission. Therefore, the church can't take that away. The bishops can't say, because we have authority over you, we've decided to use you for another purpose than that for which you agreed to give your life. And definitely not without the consent of the priest. A religious could move from one observance to a more strict observance. If that's what they discerned as right, then as long as there's no red flags, then they shouldn't be obstructed from doing it. But they shouldn't move from a stricter observance to a more lenient one. That's a failure of their vows. So you can imagine priests who've been ordained into the Novus Ordo might remain with that for the rest of their life, or they might start saying the traditional Mass. Excellent. But priests who are ordained in the traditional rite to say the traditional rite can never be forced to say the Novus Ordo, to surrender tradition. It is the stricter observance. And for want of a better phrase, it's a breach of contract if the hierarchy tries to take that away. It's not really a contract, it's a betrayal of Jesus Christ. It's a betrayal of the whole church. The point about children, if they're starving, that they have every right to take food from the household or anywhere, in fact, because the goods of this world belong to all the people of this world. One of the saints said, when you give to the poor, you're actually just giving him what is his, and God has allowed you to have it in keeping for whatever reason to distribute, but it's not yours to decide to withhold. So the bishops have authority to regulate the liturgy to make sure there are not abuses. They do not have authority to remove the liturgy. And if priests continue to offer the traditional Mass and lay people continue to come to the traditional Mass, this is not disobedience. It's a necessity for their spiritual life. The Mass of Pope St. Pius V, which is the traditional Mass going back all the way to the crucifixion, although of course it has developed, cannot be cancelled by anybody. No one has the authority to do that. You can, of course, argue for other rites, yes, but you cannot argue that that rite, the traditional Mass, be cancelled. When the COVID lockdowns came and the hierarchy expects us to surrender the liturgy, and then with Traditionis Custodes, Francis directly thinks that he can cancel it. We're under no obligation to consent to that or surrender to it. I'm not suggesting that lay people can function without the church hierarchy, or that priests can have a full ministry without regard for faculties or delegation or canonical mission. But none of us can be obliged to abandon Christ. We have a right to self-defense in as far as we can do that. Above all, that means keeping the traditional Mass, even if we have to lose so much else. If God is with us, what does it matter who is against us? And this is basically why I'm making the video series. It's self-defense, because I want to continue as a traditional priest and expose the enemy that is trying to prevent the traditional Mass. And as the video series unfolds on Rumble, I hope to show why what happened in the 1940s is crucial to that. Many in the hierarchy have submitted to the forces of this world. Some of them have been seduced by it, some of them are intimidated by it, some of them have even been planted by it in the church. But they cannot require any of us, under the pretext of obedience, to make the same surrender to Antichrist forces. Basically, they can't order us to surrender to the devil, and they can't take away the life of the church. We have this right to self-defense. We can't do everything that the hierarchy does. The church needs the hierarchy. But if we have to hold the line until they recover their backbone, then so be it. The gates of hell will never prevail. They might make our superiors wobble, we wobble ourselves as well, but that is not hell prevailing. I don't think I've succeeded in joining up all the ideas in this video, but that's partly because of the limitations of YouTube. I hope to do better elsewhere. Thank you again for all your support. And a last word on why it's so important that the church address the weaponization of the Holocaust narrative is because she will do so with the requisite charity. And if she doesn't, if she's silent, then other groups will do it and they will not have her mercy. Please God, the church will remember St. Stephen and do just as he did, whatever it cost us. For if Christ is with us, then everything is gain.